Hi, Mr. Williamson. How are you guys doing today?
Hello.
Another Thursday.
Yeah,
I got it with four days in the building for all of you, so welcome.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the show. We'll start today by asking you how you think the first few days we've had back in school with all the grades have been going.
I guess I would say so far so good. I mean, I know that there's still some hiccups. I feel like lunch and break have been a little bit crowded and or different. But it does feel like it's working, and I think that that's sort of been like the message of this whole year. Like, it's interesting and things are working and things are moving forward. I'm sure there'll still be some like hiccups to iron out. And I do hope that as things get nicer outside, we can kind of use the outdoor space more often too for like lunch and things like that. So we'll be able to spread out. But it seems like, so far so good.
Yeah, everything takes a little while to get used to. So admittedly, I'm still a little bit too afraid to head out into the hallways during break because there's so many students and we're not used to that. It was actually funny. Yesterday, I was walking down the street in my neighborhood and there was like 4 people around me. And I was like, oh my God, there's too many people here. And so that's something that we all have to readjust to as people start to come back into school and just in our day-to-day lives, that like what once felt really kind of normal might feel a little overwhelming now. So we gotta readjust ourselves to think about being around so many people at the same time.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for students who struggle with sleep schedules or like ways to improve their sleep schedules?
Sleep is so important. And it was something that I myself just recently a couple of years ago, got into a routine. And the biggest thing, which is definitely the most difficult thing for, I'm sure, a lot of people, is not bringing your phone into bed with you. Because you're scrolling through Instagram, you're scrolling through Twitter or whatnot, checking the news, and then it's an hour later and your eyes have been staring at a screen for that hour, which makes it really difficult for you to fall asleep. And it helps also waking up in the morning because I leave my phone on my dresser, which is on the other side of the room. And so I can't get to it when I get into bed. And also, when it goes off in the morning, I can't hit snooze 17 times like I did in college. Like, I have to physically get out of bed, walk across, and that's the toughest part. Once you're out of bed, you're good to go. But getting into the routine around kind of your phone was really important in my mind.
I think consistency is also important. I know this year has been anything but consistent. And I'm wondering whether having Wednesdays be more of a sort of like coming into school sort of day after break, after we come back, will help with that too. Because I think that, like everybody, like on weekends or when you don't have school the next day, I think people tend to stay up a little bit later, maybe sleep in a little bit more in the mornings. And I fully expect most of you are all sleeping beyond, the 6:30 wake up on weekends, which is very much okay. But trying to be as consistent as possible about sleep schedule from day to day can also help too. It's really tricky to fall asleep early when other nights you're staying up really, really late. So trying to be consistent. And I would totally agree with Mr. O'Mara about sort of the no screen thing. I find that even if I'm like watching TV or like on my laptop a little bit before bed, it's way harder for me to fall asleep. So I've rediscovered reading this year, which has been great. And I've actually always really liked to read for fun, but that to me is a great way that I've found to sort of like ease into bedtime. And it makes me tired. And then after 10 minutes and I've read like 6 pages and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it's bedtime when I have no idea what I just read, but that's been helping me at least.
Thank you.
So, as guidance counselors, what do you guys think are the best ways to deal with stress or, getting overwhelmed with work? This is a very stressful time that we're in right now. So what do you guys think?
For me, I think, especially this year, trying to keep up with sort of the things that I normally do, to the extent possible. We obviously have a lot of limitations on ourselves this year, but like I'm still trying to exercise, still trying to you know, go to the gym, and it's different because I'm wearing a mask and I have to stay however many feet away from other people. But, you know, trying to keep up with the routine and sort of normalcy as much as I can. I also think that connections, like the connections that we have in our lives, are super important. I know that when, you know, if I get a stressful, you know, email or phone call, like the first thing I do is go over to Mr. O'Mara's office and like complain about it and or like process it. We're in a group chat with a bunch of teachers, which like half the time is just like pictures of like, you know, some of our teacher friends' kids and like doing cute things. And the other half the time though, it's like, it's sort of venting, right? And I think that there's a catharsis in venting. And I think that there is comfort in the commonality, you know, so knowing that I'm not the only one who's stressed out by, you know, whatever is going on in all of our lives, I think makes me feel like, you know, it's okay, right? And I think that even as a guidance counselor, you know, I forget sometimes that like being stressed about things and that this is not normal, and it's okay to be, you know, upset and or stressed and anxious about all of this, because like no one's ever been through this before, right? And even though we've now been through it for over a year, it still feels weird almost every single day.
Yeah. A lot of the same stuff for me. I am not one who enjoys exercise like some people say they do or pretends to say they do. So it's all about accountability for me. So like a lot of times I will do a bike ride on like my bike at home with a friend who we set it up like for the next day saying, okay, we're going to get on at 5:45 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever it might be. Because then to me, it's like, okay, I'm held accountable by someone else, not just myself, where I can trick myself into not doing it if no one else is there. So kind of creating that accountability, because 99 out of 100 times after you do physical exercise, your body feels better and you're happy that you did it. So finding ways to potentially, like I said, trick yourself into doing those things can be really helpful, or just holding each other accountable. And the other thing that I think is really important is finding ways to acknowledge the things you've done. And by that, I mean, it can be as simple as making a to-do list. And there's something very satisfying about like checking that box. And it can be it can have a list of 20 things, and 15 of them can be small things and 5 of them can be larger tasks, but the check is the same thing. So getting through those helps you get motivated and then into the rhythm of, oh, I did 3 things, let's do 2 more. And so that stress and becoming overwhelmed feels a little bit smaller because you've checked off 8 out of 12 boxes of things you've done and you feel more accomplished. And it creates that drive and that motivation to keep going. So whereas you saying, oh my God, I have so much to do today, versus, okay, I have these 12 things to do, how many of them can I do? It kind of takes a larger picture and makes it a lot smaller.
You definitely touched on this next question's answer, but do you have any other suggestions for students trying to overcome procrastination while trying to get work done?
That's a hard one. I mean, so if anybody knows me, and I think I've come to know myself well enough to know that I don't deal well with procrastination and stress. You know, I get very overwhelmed if something is sort of hanging over my head. And I'm the type of person that like when I'm that stressed or anxious, I kind of shut down, you know, and I think that some people, that stress motivates them and they can like churn stuff out. I'm not that way. And I've learned that, you know, throughout my decades of life. So I try really hard not to get myself in that situation. And I you know, what I basically do is I set myself earlier deadlines, you know, so that if I know that I have to write, you know, a bunch of letters of recommendation for my seniors one year, and I know that I have a bunch of them due on January 1st, right? I'll set myself a deadline and say, these need to be done by, you know, December 20th. Usually probably even a little earlier than that, to be honest. And so that it sort of like tricks myself into getting things done early, but knowing that that's not the end date. You know, it's similarly like when I'm, you know, setting my time in my car, like I set the clock a little bit late so that I'm always early somewhere that I go, which now that we have these newfangled cars where I plug in my phone and that's how it knows what time it is, I can't do that anymore. But I used to set my clock in my car 4 minutes fast, right? So that I would always get to where I'm going at least 4 minutes in advance. And I know that, so like I'm not really tricking myself, but somehow that helps me. So to like kind of pretend that things are due a little bit earlier than they are, because that gives me a little bit of wiggle room, and it helps me to not get stressed about it.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the areas where Mr. Williamson and I are very different. I am a procrastinator at heart. It is just who I am, and I might be in my 30s, but some of those habits die hard type deal. But what I recognize at this point is if I'm doing that to myself, I need to take the ownership of that process. So everything I get things done when they're supposed to be done. It's a matter of when and how I get them done that might vary from Mr. Williamson. And so my things will get done and they will get done well. And sometimes that means like truly disconnecting from internet, putting my phone in the other room and taking 2 hours of completely uninterrupted time because I know that it needs to get done and it will get done type deal. So I don't think that's necessarily a suggestion and one that I want other students to be doing. And the reason why I bring it up is because we're all different learners and we're all different workers. And so you have to find your balance of trying to do things the way that people are telling you they're supposed to be done and doing things that work well for you. Some people are morning workers. Some people are evening workers. I am much more of a morning worker. So I'd rather get to school an hour before everyone, get a bunch of stuff done in kind of quiet time so that when I get home, I don't have to do that. Whereas some other teachers or people in the building or even maybe mom, dad, or whomever's at home likes to kind of ease into the day, knowing that maybe once younger siblings go to bed or once you're doing your homework, they can then kind of reconnect with that work. So finding a routine and finding a rhythm that works for you. And then that schedule, keeping a schedule, knowing when those deadlines are so that if you do have 2 or 3 deadlines on the same day, that's when you do need to plan out a bunch more.
So the virus has affected the world a lot already, but do you think it will change our generation?
It's a big question. I think that there will be changes positively and negatively that continue from here on forward. I think that not in a bad way, but I think that moving forward, we're always going to see people in the grocery store wearing masks. We're always going to see people on the T in Boston wearing masks. And what I appreciate about that is that this incredibly difficult situation has normalized that a little bit. And you don't necessarily know, like I remember before the pandemic, seeing people in the grocery store or on the T wearing a mask and being like, what are they doing? But you don't know what conditions they may have. You don't know what their immune system is. And so this is normalizing that a little bit. So thinly veiled in there is that positive of like normalizing things that may be a little bit different than what we're used to. I think it's something that we'll never forget. I think this school year is something that will be unique to all of us. And I think for students, it's going to make it a lot easier for a lot of you when you go into the business world and have to work from home. So many of my friends now are completely remote because of the pandemic. Before they were every couple days, but they're not going back to the office. So they've had to readjust their lives to completely remote moving forward. You've had the experience in school, and that will probably continue in college so that it's not a huge adjustment when you're adults.
Yeah, I think that, even kind of like what Mr. Romero was just saying, sort of the idea that, the schedule that we are living this year is a lot closer to a sort of college schedule than what our typical like high school program is like. So, being in class a couple days a week and then having a bunch of homework to do for, a few days down the road is a lot more collegiate than what we typically have. So I do wonder whether the folks that are going through this now are going to be more prepared for their, freshman year of college in that way. I think there's also a lot of other impacts, that is different for each person. I certainly hope that sort of the feelings of isolation sort of get better as things become open more and as we're able to sort of see each other more often. I know a lot of families, took a big financial hit too. People lost jobs, and that all takes time to come back. So I think on an individual basis, there's going to be a lot of bigger impact, and I hope that things can slowly progress back to quote unquote normal. But the reality is that sometimes they might not, and sometimes it may take a long time. And, I think that one of the things that I hope comes out of this is sort of this shared experience. And it's a shared human experience, right? It's not just, people in Dover or people in Sherburne or people in Massachusetts or people in, wherever. It's a global experience that we've all had together. And, while in the current, I guess, sort of like cultural, political climate we have, I don't know if I'm going to hold my breath, but what I would love to have happen is for, us to use this to come together kind of as people, right? And maybe, connect a little bit more and care a little bit more about each other. And, we'll see. But I would love for there to be some sort of positive, collective outcome.
So piggybacking off of what Daniel said, or Daniel's question, obviously we've seen a ton of change with school and with work and stuff. So do you think there'll be anything that will stick around in terms of changes that we'll see in future years?
I think there definitely. Ooh, echo there. I think there definitely will be some changes that stick around. I am actually working with Mr. Smith right now and part of the school council on looking at those things. So kind of getting a feel from teachers, educators, students, parents and guardians, people of the community of like what went really well this year, what changes were made that were actually helpful, as simple as changing the amount of time in between classes. So the stress last year of getting from the science wing to the math wing in 4 minutes, like that's tough, particularly if you're finishing something up. But adding a couple minutes kind of alleviates that stress. So small changes like that we're trying to find ways to implement into the day-to-day will definitely come about this spring and this summer for next school year.
Yeah, and then I think sort of on, a maybe not student related piece, but I think we've started to do like meetings on Zoom, for instance. We've had our guidance, parent guardian nights on Zoom, which I think have actually great. I think they're like doubly attended as they were in past years. And it also makes me think about, the families who we have them at, 6 p.m., families whose parents may not be able to get home for 6 p.m. or get home and then back to the school for 6 p.m. So I think some of the things that we've been doing, like having meetings on Zoom, have worked really well. And, I think that they, stuff like that we may continue to have like panels, from people from all over the country. We used to have people have to like fly in from, Vanderbilt to come to a college chat. But with the advent of Zoom and sort of like it becoming more regular or normalized, I think that really does open up a lot of doors to some interesting programming that we could build in.
Thank you for that. We're gonna close here today just by asking you what your plans are for vacation.
So I am very excited and happy to be fully vaccinated. And my niece is about 1.5 years. So I'm definitely going to be heading down to my brother's house and hanging out with her before she hits those terrible 2s.
I'm just kind of hanging out. I think we're tired, right? Like I think all of us probably. Rest, relaxation, and like some like rejuvenation, hopefully, and coming back sort of to finish up the year strong. But no real plans other than just maybe not coming to work every day, which I'm kind of excited about.
Let's hope for warm weather.
Also that.
Yeah, outside as much as possible.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Your thoughts and answers are very much appreciated. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.